Welcome to Here She Stands, the podcast where Lutheran women from across Australia come together as a community, sharing stories and testifying to God's goodness. We do this so when the tribulations of this world try to push us down, each woman can hold firm to the word of God and confidently say, "Here I stand, I can do no other." My name is Lexi, and I am a homeschooling mama of 4 girls and the wife of a first-year pastoral student. I love theology books, classical music, and I'm currently trying my hand at becoming more self-sufficient.
And I'm Sonia, a Lutheran pastor's wife, homeschooling mum of 2 kiddos, homemaker, tradition lover, and all-round crafty person.
In today's episode, we will be chatting with Kathleen Mills, a Lutheran Deaconess who serves at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Shepparton, Victoria. So Kathleen, welcome to Here She Stands.
Thanks so much, Lexi. It's awesome to be here with you today.
And thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join us and to talk about deaconesses. So I was first introduced to the role of deaconess in 2020 when I actually came across your interview with Joshua Pfeiffer, and it blew my mind. I had never heard of a deaconess before. This was before I became Lutheran. And just this concept of this theologically trained woman serving in the church and serving her community. And so we're very excited to have you on to talk about, what is a deaconess? So to begin with, Kathleen, would you be kind enough to actually just tell everyone what is a deaconess?
Sure. And it's not surprising that you wouldn't necessarily have heard of deaconesses or known what a deaconess is or what she does. I was born and raised Lutheran and didn't know myself until about 6 years before I became one. So a deaconess is a servant, first and foremost. The word deaconess comes from the Greek word diakonos, which means servant. But in a church context, in the Lutheran Church, a deaconess is a professional church worker, a theologically trained woman who works to share the gospel of Jesus in our communities and in our congregations through teaching and through spiritual care and looking after those around her, and through works of mercy, being the hands and feet of Jesus to the community.
Okay, so could you please just go into that a little bit more and maybe describe some of the different jobs that deaconesses do within their church?
So I talked about, kind of pinpointed without really intending to, the 3 main areas of service and training in which I operate. And those are teaching the Christian faith, spiritual care, and works of mercy. So in my context here at St. Paul's in Shepparton, teaching the Christian faith is I run Sunday school and I help with First Communion classes and confirmation classes and Bible studies. Spiritual care, you think about hospital visitations, shut-in calls. Here it means visiting lots and lots of beautiful babies. Our congregation has a large African immigrant contingent and a lot of young families. So we've had 3 births just in the last month and a half or so. So yes, being able to care for families and their spiritual needs throughout all of life, from birth all the way through till natural death. And also works of mercy. And that is probably the most indicative of diaconia, of service, of the work that deaconesses do. If you think about the very physical needs of the body of Christ, I think about Jesus when he's talking in the parable of separating the sheep from the goats, right? I was hungry and you fed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison, etc. Those things, Jesus says, if we do for the least of these, we are doing for him. This service to people in need is where deaconess ministry really shines.
Thank you for telling us how to say that word, the Greek word. We were trying to figure out how to say it earlier.
So being a deaconess, it's really just being the hands and feet of Jesus and being in the trenches with the people and just supplying their needs and serving them in whatever way that you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, in order to do that, what type of training do deaconesses actually receive? Because a lot of it is mercy care. Do you actually have to learn how to properly give mercy care? Is that part of the training?
It is part of the training. So yeah, so the training that I received, I went through the deaconess training program at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, and had a couple of babies and took some time off, and then went back and actually completed it through Concordia Theological Seminary, Fort Wayne. So a foot in both seminaries in America. But the training that we receive is a combination of theological training. So there's exegetical training and a study in the scriptures and how to study scriptures and how to teach from the scriptures, and also practical training. So the practical training might be something like a course on spiritual care. I know in our deaconess program, specifically spiritual care of women and all of the issues that are unique that might be really well served in a setting with a deaconess, that things that women may not necessarily feel comfortable right away going to their pastors about.
Yeah.
But then also for mercy care, there is an importance in learning how to support people, how best to provide for their needs, and learning when you might not be able to best support people's needs and how to refer, and knowing what organizations are available to you for that. If somebody comes to me and they don't have a place to live, I don't have the ability, the means to bring them into my own home. But I can help refer them to organizations that can help them. I can help them fill out applications for rental properties and things like that. And yes, needing to know how to manage that care well is part of that also.
Yes. So do you also learn how to work alongside a pastor as well?
Absolutely. That's absolutely essential. So deaconess ministry is an auxiliary office to the office of the public ministry, to the office of pastor. So when you think of a typical Lutheran congregation, right, you have a pastor who is called there, and his primary reason, the reason your church called your pastor, is so that he would deliver word and sacrament ministry to you and among you, so that he's there to lead the services and bring you God's word in his sermons on Sunday, and to deliver the sacraments to you, to baptize your babies, to do funerals, all of those things. And deaconess ministry, I don't do any of those things because there is so much other church work to be done that is not word and sacrament ministry.
True.
A large congregation, or in a congregation with a special text like what we have, there are additional ministry needs that, if there's a lot of people who need help in the congregation, can overwhelm a solo pastor who's all by himself. Deaconesses can come along and uphold and support that ministry by taking on some of the burden of these more physical, immediate needs. But then also, it is important to have that theological training to come along and realize that it is, anytime that you're serving people's physical needs, there's still an opportunity there to develop relationships with people and to see what's happening in their lives. There might be additional counseling needs that might turn into confession and absolution needs, things that we can turn people back to the word and sacrament ministry that they're going to receive from their pastor, and encourage them to make use of those gifts as well.
Yeah, so the spiritual and the physical are deeply connected. So quite often when you're doing physical mercy care work, that spiritual theological need is also there.
Very much so. I did a little bit of reading from Wilhelm Lohe on deaconesses. He was one of the proponents of deaconess ministry in Germany, and then also sent some to America. And that's kind of where the American deaconess movement gets their roots. And in terms of what he expected his deaconesses to learn and to know, he thought it was necessary for them to understand the history of mercy care, understanding the different resources and systems that are available where she lives for referrals. All deaconesses very early on were trained as nurses. And so there's deaconess hospitals all over in America, because that was their main role of service. So it was important for them to understand their nursing. It was important for them to understand, he said, the Lutheran confessions, because they needed to be able to engage with people and to recognize what is good about our faith and the church, and being able to be firm in that when they're ministering to people without being taken away and subverted into any errors. And he said, but ultimately, above all, she must not forget first and foremost to study scripture, to study the Bible. And that is he said her dearest paradise and the place for holding sacred knowledge. Scripture is first.
Yes.
Confessions come up and support that. And then you use what you've learned from God's word about caring for the world to go out into the world and see its needs and learn how to meet them.
Yeah. Wow, that's really beautiful.
It's gorgeous. I'm sure I had to read it earlier on, but this was a document that had been lost to me, and I kind of rediscovered it in preparation for talking with you. I'm like, oh, this is gorgeous. I'm going to have to, print this out and hang on to it.
Yeah, that is really, really beautiful. So I guess just from some of the things that you said before, so a deaconess is basically a Lutheran nun in a way.
Yes. So especially in that same document, Lola talks about that being kind of the reality, especially for the 19th century deaconesses, not in a compulsory kind of way, in a way of that they were willing to kind of give themselves up. And early on, they were unmarried. They lived together in a deaconess house in community with one another. And there was a deaconess mother, who looked after them. And it would have been if a woman were going to be getting married, she would leave the diaconate, she would leave the deaconess house, and she would no longer be in service if she went and got married. That has since changed, and we have fewer kind of livelihood connections to that style of service. But certainly the idea of a woman serving on the ground in mercy care capacity, there's a lot in common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're married and you have 3 children?
That's correct. Yes.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about that process for you of being a mother and a wife, but also serving as a deaconess. Did you start your study to be a deaconess before you were married or after you were married, or where were you in your journey at that point?
Yeah, so I did. I was preparing for my studies as a deaconess. I wasn't actively in the deaconess program yet. I was at university in my undergraduate studies, which was where I heard about deaconesses for the first time. I met my husband at university. And so he's been with me for my whole process of actually going through the deaconess program and receiving my commissioning and throughout all of my call processes and how we ended up in Australia. So yeah, the reality is that we're kind of unique even in other church family worlds in that of the two of us, I'm the professional church worker.
Yeah.
Usually, the husband is a pastor and the pastor's wife comes along and supports that ministry. Like that is a vocation in and of itself to be the wife of a pastor.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times I know several deaconesses who are married to pastors, and they both serve the church, sometimes together, sometimes in separate contexts. So maybe the pastor is the pastor of the local church and the deaconess wife is working at the local aged care center.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It creates challenges for families where both of them are church workers. The pastoral call is going to take precedence over that, and there may not always be an appropriate deaconess placement in close proximity. But for me, my husband, Joel, has been amazing and has been all along incredibly supportive of my work and my service. I warned him when we got engaged that, he was marrying a church worker. I might get called somewhere weird. I thought I meant Iowa. Yeah, I had no vision toward or ambition about, or even really a desire necessarily for international travel or living. But when I was approached about moving to Australia to do work here, he was the one who actually really encouraged me to look into it further. I would have been like, maybe not. But he was like, no, you should go get some more information about that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And he's just always been very supportive of that. And our children, I said that I was partway through my deaconess training when we got pregnant with my first child. So I did have to take kind of a bit of a break in my training because the needs of being mom and wife were greater. Mm-hmm. But as we went through the process, I was blessed to be able to do my internship on a part-time basis. So I had 3 young children, but the church didn't need me full-time either. So I was able to juggle between those a little bit more. And that's kind of the blessing of church work, is that churches value families.
Yes.
And churches recognize that their pastors, their deaconesses, that they have families and want those families to be well supported and loved. So usually, I don't work a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday schedule I do keep office hours, but I can also say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to take Tuesday off instead of Thursday this week because my daughter has a ballet concert and I would like to attend that. We can, and in a team ministry especially, so when pastor has needs, I'm able to say, yep, that's no problem, I'll be in the office, and vice versa, can kind of cover each other a little bit in that regard.
Yeah. So just going back to how you said that your husband played a big role in, making you look into this Australian position more. Yeah, I think it really strikes me just how much, even though you're the church worker, in a way it is a family ministry. It is a family
absolutely.
ministry.
That's true. Yeah, that's true for us. That's true for pastors and their families. Pastors' wives make incredible sacrifices to support their husbands' ministries. My family has had to make sacrifices to support my ministry. Yeah, it is. It is. The whole family is involved in that. The whole family is affected by that.
Yeah.
Just as God called you to be a deaconess, he called your husband to be the husband of a deaconess and everything that involves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also comes with blessings, of course. The love and support of a congregation, of the families of their church workers is fantastic. I've always felt very loved and cared for by all of the communities in which I've served. But yeah, there is a reality for vocation. So vocation is this idea that we have these roles that are God-given to us, and we live our lives, in Christian love by going and doing those things. Like, how do I serve God? People want to know how they can serve God. I can serve God by feeding my family a nutritious dinner because he gave me a husband and children who need to be cared for, right? And I'm doing God's work when I look after them well, because that's the family he's given me. That's my vocation as a wife and a mother. So my children have a vocation to be children, to be students. And they are children of a deaconess, which means that they have been growing up in the church, raised in the church. It means, sometimes they're sitting out in the narthex, reading a book or scrolling Instagram, probably more likely, while I'm doing some work in the office with somebody after the church service. And they don't get to leave when everybody else is done because church is over, because mom's at work.
Yeah.
And that's part of their vocation, is upholding and supporting our family, and contributing to it in the ways that children should.
Yes.
Do you have those conversations with your children?
Yeah. When we have two vehicles, sometimes it means mom comes to church alone and then dad brings the kids closer to the time worship is actually going to start. But they have done that, and my kids have grabbed a book because they know it's going to be one of those days. I warn them in advance. Oh, I'm going to be at church for a while afterwards. Okay, I'll grab a book. They've absolutely walked that walk with me, and the tech booth is full of Mills kids for running the Sunday service. My son runs the cameras for the live stream, and I used to do the slides, but my youngest, Becca, has said she actively wants that job. Great, all yours, you may have it.
That's awesome.
So they are as involved in my ministry here. They play a role in it. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I guess in many ways, you and Sonia can relate to many of the same things, because you're both in church work in some capacity, you being a deaconess and Sonia being a pastor's wife. And here I am over here. I'm not yet a pastor's wife, but that will happen in the next 5 years. So any advice from either of you women?
So what is your vocation now? Your vocation is the wife of a student, somebody who's studying and preparing.
That's right.
And upholding that and supporting it and encouraging it and doing what you can to enable your husband to complete his studies well.
Yes. And just that whole concept of vocation. That's another thing that blew my mind when I started looking into Lutheran theology, is this idea of vocation brought so much peace to my life, because my vocation was a wife and a mother and wherever God had placed me at that time. And so, this idea of vocation, it really is such a comfort, and just serve the Lord where you are with what you have. Yeah.
That's something that I've been working through over the last couple of years, is when I first became a pastor's wife, I was encouraged, his job is not your job. You're your own person. You can do whatever you like. But I really felt the call on myself from the Lord to be a pastor's wife. That is my vocation, that he didn't just call my husband to be a pastor and I'm being dragged along, but he called me to be my husband's wife, who happens to be a pastor. So he also called me to be a pastor's wife. And since sort of figuring that out, it's done the same. It's really given me a lot of peace, and it's helped me to find the beauty in that, to realize that I have a really unique opportunity to get to know our parishioners really well and to serve them in so many other ways that are quite unique to being a pastor's wife.
Yeah.
That's completely true. And that vocation, it's like, what is it? It's comforting because we have a tendency to want to set apart certain roles as special or more or better. We're encouraged to, you think about what little kids say they want to be when they grow up, and you get, ballerina or astronaut or firefighter. And the parents are dreaming dreams of doctors and lawyers. And, for us, the reality of vocation, where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that kid grows up to be a doctor or a ballerina or a baker or a mother. Like, all of those roles are blessed by God and are used in his service to the world. God doesn't need our good works. Our neighbor does. And he gives us this unique place. And he says, if you're doing the work that I gave you in the place that I've put you, that is to my glory and to your benefit and to the benefit of those you serve. And there's nothing more comforting than that, to just knowing that living your life and changing babies' diapers, which Luther says he had a special joy and pleasure. Like, how was he worthy to be responsible for these little babies? He talked about daddy's changing diapers, right?
Yeah.
And looking after the mother of his children. That was a very important vocation to him.
Yeah, and
right?
Instead of training up our children to become a doctor or become a baker, we can train them up to do whatever vocation they're in for the Lord and to the best of their ability as unto the Lord.
That's right. And it could be that they're a doctor and that they use their skill to uphold and promote life and help people live well and healthy. And they give God glory when they do that, And, they don't have to put little crosses on all of the bread that they bake as a baker to prove that they're Christian. They just bake good bread and sell it at a fair price, and they give glory to God in that. Whatever it is, they can be whatever they want to be. And then they can do that to the glory of God.
Yeah. So I guess one thing that I would really, really like to ask you, this is coming from just a homeschooling mum that has just started up a podcast. How do you balance your multiple vocations? You're a wife, a mother, also a deaconess. You're serving everyone. How do you balance that?
I won't say that it's never been a challenge to do that. The reality is that I do serve everyone. And the best way to mark that is to recognize who is my closest neighbor. Right?
Yeah.
So my primary vocation, my first vocation, is wife. I'm a wife to my husband first. I've mentioned already he entered into this estate of holy matrimony with me with the understanding of what it was that I was called to do.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed that he's been supportive of that. But my primary calling is to him. We both work outside the home. By the time we moved here, my children were 7, 8, 9. Now they're 14, 16, 17. They're on their way toward relative self-sufficiency. So the challenge is a little bit less for me now in terms of balancing between deaconess and mom.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't do a lot of evening appointments because my kids are running around. They've got jobs that I've got to get them to and dance classes for 10 hours a week. And, I try to be home with my family as much as I can in the evenings. And sometimes that presents challenges because the people I'm serving also have full-time jobs, and it can be more challenging to find times to meet together with people if they don't get off of work until 4:30 and I'm out of the office by then. But having to put those kind of boundaries in place, you hear even in the secular world talking about work-life balance, that is a reality in the church as well. I'm sure, Sonia, you probably have some experience with some after hours challenges for your husband, some pastoral things that he has to attend to.
Yeah.
That aren't during office hours. And of course, there are emergencies where, if somebody is gravely ill or dying and they're in the hospital and it's 2:00 in the morning, yep, he's going.
Yeah.
You better believe it. Of course he is. But yeah, appointments that aren't urgent, right? It's important for church workers to schedule and guard their time. I have to schedule and guard my time. And I've actually gotten quite a bit better about it. I used to be headed for burnout because I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And my pastors actually have been the ones who have worked with me and supported me in that and encouraged me to take my leave and to, take my rest days and take time in lieu if something comes up and interrupts my normal rest time.
Yeah. So you're kind of working from this inward circle outwards. You start with rest, then your husband is your number one priority, then your children are the next priority, and then your vocation, your job is your next priority after that.
That's right.
Yeah. Like that. So basically, prioritize vocations. I've actually just written this down on a sticky note. Prioritize your vocations. So I guess one thing that we probably should have addressed earlier in this episode is finding out, you're obviously not from here. How did you end up coming to Australia?
Yeah, the accent has betrayed me, has it? Yes.
It certainly has, yes.
It's been 7 years and it's never going to go away. So I did my training and I was serving as a deaconess in Columbus, Ohio. And as a deaconess in the LCMS, occasionally we will get notifications of potential deaconess positions. So a church is looking for a deaconess to do playing the organ and teaching Sunday school or something, in Nowhereville, Iowa. And this option is available if anybody's interested. Here's the name of the pastor. You can email him or what have you. One of my deaconess sisters, she is really gifted in music and language. And so she does hymnal translation work. So she goes into other Lutheran churches around the world and helps them develop their hymnals and helps them put the music and the words together and translates hymns and all that stuff. She had just done some work on the hymnal for the Lutheran Church in Kenya, which is Swahili language based.
Yeah.
So Matt Anchor came to know Deaconess Sandra, through the Kiswahili language resources and was looking for support for the ministry here.
Mm-hmm.
And he described what he needed, what kind of work needed to be done. And she says, it sounds like you need a deaconess.
Yep.
And put in our deaconess Facebook chat group, that she had a friend in Australia, a pastor, who was looking for a deaconess to do youth and family multicultural ministry support. And I read it. I was like, that'll be good for some other deaconess. Somebody will really enjoy that position. And I let it go. But I could not stop thinking about it. It just kept coming back to the front of my mind. So I told Joel, I told my husband, I was like, they want a deaconess to go to Australia for 3 years to do this. And that's kind of interesting. You don't see something like that every day. And he's like, yeah, that is interesting. That's exciting. That's really cool. He says, that would be an adventure. That would be great for our kids. You should look into that. I'm like, no. You were supposed to say that's going to be nice for some other girl, some young single thing, the idea of moving my family to another continent. I didn't know. No, I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested. So I wrote Pastor Matt to tell him now how not interested I was. And that if he had other deaconesses who were interviewing with him, if he'd already gotten, 15 emails saying, pick me, to pretend that I did not write him.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to know how it was going.
Yes.
And he said, I have 0 applicants. Here's what's happening in my church. Please prayerfully consider. And it was over the course of a couple of months. It went from, this is stupid. This is a really bad idea. Ask him and he'll tell you. I was a nut job.
Yeah.
I was fighting against it, actively railing against the concept. 2, this is unequivocally what God is calling our family to. So it was a lot of talking and interactions with my church back in the LCMS, with the Lutheran Church of Australia, interviews, psychological evaluations, medical appointments, you name it, to eventually end up being confirmed from the Goulburn Murray parish. So our parish is 2 Point. We have Shepperton, and then we have Trinity Lutheran Church in Echuca. Their church council did interviews with me, and it's not properly a call, but it's a contracted, but with the understanding that it's for this ministry role, was issued to me. And that was after months and months of talking about it. So by the time that I actually got the letter that said, here's what the position description and offer is, I accepted that in like 20 minutes flat, because I knew that that's what was happening. We were planning for it at that point. And that was 2015. And then I didn't even have a passport. So I had to start with that before we could even apply for a visa.
Yeah.
So the international process of bringing me here took about a year. So we started here in May of 2016.
Okay.
Wow.
That's insane. I mean, it's tough taking my kids to get groceries. I can't imagine moving country.
How old are they?
My eldest is 7 and my youngest is 7 months.
Yeah, so. No, I wouldn't have done it with a baby. I guarantee you I wouldn't have done it with a baby.
Okay.
So my youngest was 7 at the time. So like that school age, they were old enough that they weren't baby on the hip dependent on mom.
Yes.
And they were still young enough that it was have mom and dad will travel. No super heavy, deep connections to our home in terms of like friend relationships and their schooling and things like that. It would be way harder to try to go back to America now at their current age. It was the butter zone. It was the perfect time.
So you would say God's timing was pretty good there.
Really good. Excellent. Perfect. His timing is always perfect.
Amen.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that just blows my mind, just how it was, just perfect timing. And the Lord placed it on your husband's heart to, encourage you to take this position. And your children, were they, excited to go as well?
So obviously my husband and I had been talking about it way before we started talking to the kids about it, because it was very uncertain. It was super I didn't even know if I was going to do it. We finally decided to tell them because Pastor Anchor was coming out to America to do final the LCA sent him to the United States to do final meetings and interviews with us to confirm that we were the right family for the position before they issued the offer. So I had to explain to the kids why this Australian pastor was going to come hang out in Columbus and talk to mom for a week, right?
Yep.
And they understood the concept already, that I was a deaconess, that I worked in a church. And I had discussed in the past with them, just like in passing, that sometimes that means you go to a different church because a different church calls you to work for them. And I went through that process with them. And I said, in the church, the name of the church is St. Paul's Lutheran Church. And I said, the name of the city is Shepperton. And I said, and the name of the state is Victoria. And that's when my son's eyes kind of flash, because he's got all 50 states memorized and Victoria ain't one of them.
Yeah.
And I said, and the country is Australia. And my youngest, she's like 6 at the time, goes, oh, we're moving to Australia?
Wow.
And it was like this. She was so excited. And then my oldest starts bawling. She's sobbing. Like, it was an immediate, viscerally negative, like, oh my gosh, might be the worst news of my life reaction. And I watched that sobbing carry from the oldest down to the youngest, So the excited one 2 seconds later was also in tears because big sister was crying, and that obviously meant this was terrible.
Yeah.
But the more we talked about, that was the nice thing about the international process being so slow, is we had heaps of time to get used to it. I didn't say we're moving in a month. It was, we were moving and it took a year. Like, we got really comfortable with that idea. We were all anxious and ready for it to happen by the time it did. But it was comically bad when I delivered the news.
Yes. Yeah, but obviously they survived.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And have adjusted beautifully and are doing, very well here and are happy here. We always tell everybody what we miss most. Like, obviously we love our family, we miss our family.
Yes.
The internet allows communication in a way that it's a beautiful time to have to live separately from your family. So we still get to be in touch with them and have video chats with grandma and what have you. We joke that what we miss most is the food. Like just the stuff that you grow up with. My kids will ask for Capri Suns, which are juice pouches, that would be in their lunch boxes.
Yeah.
Stuff that we don't have here. And Australia, westernized country, English, not difficult necessarily to adjust to, but culture shock is a thing.
Yes.
But they've adapted really well. My youngest is 14 now. She was 7 when we moved here. She's literally lived half of her life in Australia now. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've got sausages in bread at Bunnings, and that's pretty good.
My son's working at Bunnings now, and he's excited when he gets a Saturday shift because he can go get a snag.
Yeah, go get a snag. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
That's great.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate joy of being Australian is snags at Bunnings.
There you go.
Yeah. So now for a question that's a little bit different. And we did briefly talk about this in our phone chat a couple of weeks ago. And that has to do with you're the one that has the theological training and you're the church worker. So in your family, who is the spiritual head of your family? Is it you or is it your husband?
My husband is the spiritual head of my household because that's his vocation.
Yeah.
Right? Now, how that plays out in practice, I'll be really honest. Mm-hmm. There were times in my life and in raising my kids where my spiritual focus wasn't in the household. I was working and whatever. My husband was the one who was like, hey, we need to be more diligent about our table grace and about making sure that we are our home spiritual practices together as a family. Yeah. It had fallen off my radar. He took responsibility for that. The children have been baptized. The children have been, we're working on confirmation. It's a very long and off and on process at Shepperton at the best of times. COVID made it even worse. Yeah. But I helped the children with their instruction, but so did Dad. Yeah. Right? Dad's responsible for making sure that they're raised in the faith, and he takes an active role in that. If he has questions about stuff or wants to talk about the Bible with me, he recognizes that I've got some study under my belt that might be useful, but he doesn't use that as permission to shirk his responsibility, if that makes sense. Yes. He doesn't just say, oh, you're the church person, I'll let you deal with that. It's not about that. And I don't step over him and say, I'm the church person, so that's my job, because it's not my job. It's his job. And I defer to him in that. He's the reason we're in Australia. He really is. If he hadn't been supportive of it, I wouldn't have considered it. Yeah. But and so there is, I love my husband and he's amazing. And there is sacrificial love for me in that. That's him loving his wife the way Christ loves the church and gives up his life for her. That's his job, right? Yes. And he takes that seriously, and I am blessed by God to have a husband who takes that seriously and looks after me that way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a great answer.
That's really, really beautiful. And with my husband studying to be a pastor, this is something that I'm learning at the moment. Like just the other day, not the other day, a couple of weeks ago, he said, I want to start doing morning matins with the girls.
Beautiful.
And so we've started that, and it's okay, sweetheart. You're the spiritual head of this family. I'll support you in that. And it's been a challenge getting 4 little ones to sit still. But yeah, just letting our husbands do the vocation that God has given them and encouraging and supporting them in that. Yeah, but I'm really glad that, you're happy to talk about that, because I think it is something that's really beautiful and really, really important.
Yeah. And it's so missed and misunderstood.
Yes.
The reality of spiritual headship and submission to your husband as to the Lord, right? Yes. You get that part. You hear about that. Oh, well, the husband's the head of the house and he's in charge. Yeah. Right. you miss the other half. You miss he is supposed to be, right, as Christ to his wife, right? This sacrificial, supporting, giving love, right? Do you have a hard time submitting to Christ? The answer is yes, you do, because you're a sinner, right? But we don't rail against that and talk about it negatively the way we do about railing against the submission of a wife to a husband, right? Because the world sees that as men are putting women down and if that's happening, and I'm not saying it doesn't, right? There are situations where women are abused by their partners, right? And that is horrible and awful, and that man is sinning against his wife, against his vocation, and against his God. It doesn't mean that the design God made is bad. It means that humans are sinful and cannot complete it. What God ordains, what God designs, what God plans is good. And if we could just do it, we'd have amazing lives. It would be perfect the way God always intended it to be. And when, as Christians, we see the reality of that, and by the help of the Holy Spirit try to walk in it, it goes well for us. Because it's the way God designed it, and it's awesome. My husband and I love each other. It's not like we've never fought. It's not like we don't have issues, but God ordained our relationship and our roles within it, and we try to live that way because it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so what you're saying is that spiritual headship doesn't look like your husband having more knowledge of the scriptures or knowing Greek or Hebrew or being really educated in the scriptures, but it looks like leading your family in walking with God and making sure that it happens and that your children are taught and that you pray together as a family and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The reality is there are way more families in which neither parent is a professional church worker or has any exceptional theological knowledge. Now, it is the duty of the father, to teach his children in the faith, which means, he best be in the word himself, right? And having opportunities to learn and grow in his faith so that he can pass it on to his children. That's part of spiritual headship, right? But no, you don't have to have any special theological training or knowledge in order to do that. That's why Luther's Small Catechism, it's as the head of the household, should teach his kids. It's supposed to be designed to be simple and give families a template to work from, a place to be in the Word together to teach these truths to our little ones in a way that they can grasp, even if they can't grasp it and all they're doing is smashing some Lego bricks together on mom's lap because they're only 18 months old. While it's happening, you're still building that pattern. You're still being in the habit of spending time as a family with God, because when 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he's there with them. That's in your home. It's with your families around the dinner table. And that a father can, absolutely step into that with whatever it is that he's got. There's resources available. If anybody, this is here she stands, but I hope there's some guys who are listening too. If you want help with this, go see your pastor and he will happily give you heaps of stuff to take home and share with your kids to make faith life a more active part of your, dinner table routine.
True.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Amen to that. Now, we're coming towards the end of this episode, and there was just one more thing I was going to ask you to do, and that is to read out the True Deaconess Spirit poem that you not only shared in the video you did with Joshua Pfeiffer, but we talked about it beforehand as well. And I think it's not only relevant to women who are deaconesses or wanting to be deaconesses, but also to any woman who is passionate about serving God in whatever vocation that he has given her.
Yeah, it is. It's really beautiful. It's kind of the unofficial motto of deaconess ministry. It was something that was part of my training and formation, was to have this around and to meditate on this. We shared it with one another routinely in our devotions. And it's actually part of the commissioning rite when I received my pin and was made a deaconess. It was a call and response where the deaconess who came to do my commissioning asked the questions and I answered them. And so it's beautiful. It's written by Wilhelm. I mentioned earlier his connection to bringing deaconesses to the American Lutheran Church. Your deaconesses that you had in Australia back earlier in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, out of the same tradition, out of Neuendettelsau in Germany. Huge proponent of deaconess ministry.
Yeah.
So the true deaconess spirit, he says, what is my want? I want to serve. Whom do I want to serve? The Lord in his wretched ones and his poor. And what is my reward? I serve neither for reward nor thanks, but out of gratitude and love. My reward is that I am permitted to serve. And if I perish in this service, if I perish, said Queen Esther. I would perish for him who gave himself for me, but he will not let me perish. And if I grow old in this service, then shall my heart be renewed as a palm tree, and the Lord shall satisfy me with grace and mercy. I go my way in peace, casting all my care upon him.
Thank you for joining us today on the Here She Stands podcast. We hope that this episode has encouraged you and edified your faith. Don't forget to check out the show notes for information and links relating to today's episode. You can find Here She Stands on Facebook and Instagram, or you can email us at hereshestands.podcast@gmail.com. If you would like to subscribe to our newsletter, please go to our website at hereshestands.online and fill in the subscription form. This way we can keep you updated with the latest news and also send you links to new episodes as they are released. In our next episode, the tables will be turned, well, partially, and I will be interviewing my co-host Sonia. Sonia will be sharing her story and talking about how she became Lutheran. Until then, I pray that you will hold fast to God's word and confidently say, "Here I stand, I can do no other."